Malik Nabers takes another small but encouraging step forward in his return to the field.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. My name is Patricia Traina, your host, and today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Giant fans, on today's episode, Malik Nabers took a small but significant step forward towards getting back on the field full time. We'll talk about that as well as a few other developments from the 8th day of training camp. Then in segment 2, I want to discuss John Harbaugh's approach to basically the whole offseason, the spring and the summer, and why I really like it and why I think it's going to make a big difference for this team. So it's kind of like a broad scale type of approach, but it's really been a nice one to see. So we'll talk about that in segment 2. And then in segment 3, the top 100 players as voted on by the Locked On NFL hosts is out. 3 Giants made the list. I'll tell you where they landed, and I'll tell you if I agree with the placement, and if so, why or why not. So that's what we've got planned for you today. Again, welcome to everybody. All right. The big news out of training camp. Now, let me start off by saying that the 8th practice that was held on Thursday, it was a walkthrough, which we expected. Harbaugh said that that was going to be the case earlier in the week. The Giants had 3 practices in a row with pads on, the 3 very physical practices. That is the maximum that they can have on in one stretch. So as I've been telling you, now they have to wait 3 calendar days before they can next put the pads on. So I would expect Friday's practice and Saturday's practice, the last 2 practices that are going to be at the Greenbrier, I would expect those are going to be padless. So the practices are still 2.5 hours, but they're padless. So they're a little less intense. And Thursday's session was more of a walkthrough phase. Now, what was so significant about that with Malik Nabers? It was the first time since returning to practice that Malik Nabers took part in the team drills. Now, again, it's a walkthrough pace, very slow. It's more or less kind of, let's get it down. Let's kind of get into the flow of things as best as we can. Let's see how it looks and actually do it. But it was a step forward because, Malik up until this point has been working in individual drills. He's been working to the side, hasn't been involved with team drills. So the closer he gets to being clear to work in team drills in a controlled atmosphere, the better it's going to be for him. Because A, it's going to do wonders for his psyche. Because, it's almost like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's been a long tunnel for Malik Nabers since tearing his ACL back in week 4 of last season. So just by building that up and giving him confidence to say, okay, look, this is like riding a bike. You didn't really forget anything. You've seen this offense, through the classroom sessions and whatnot. So now you're kind of getting in a feel for, okay, even though it's slow-mo, we're going to go this way on this play, we're going to go that way on this play, and we're going to catch balls from the quarterback. So it was a big step forward, I think, for Malik Nabers. Now, obviously, you want to ramp him up. You want to continue to ramp him up. You want to get him to the point where he is participating in full practices. That still might not be coming anytime soon. When I say anytime soon, he's probably a couple weeks still away. But as he makes practice and as he continues to feel good the day after a practice, it's coming closer. Now, again, don't expect to see Malik in the preseason games, of which start next week for the Giants, but that's a very encouraging step for the Giants to see Malik Nabers go out there to get some work in with the team drills, kind of get used to, the cadence, everything. Because remember, it's a new system. So the last thing you want to do is have Malik go out there, when he's fully ready, and now all of a sudden he's kind of behind everybody else. So big step forward for Malik, very encouraging, and let's hope it continues. Now, a couple other things that came out of the camp. John Harbaugh said that slot cornerback Drew Phillips has a quote-unquote mild knee sprain. I don't know what exactly constitutes mild, but he did say he was going to miss a few, some time, I think is what his exact words were. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, let's see how much time Drew Phillips actually misses. It does sound like Drew Phillips will be ready for the season, so it's just a matter of how much time is he actually going to miss. Now, in his place, Harbaugh talked about Ardarius Washington, a guy that I touted on yesterday's show. He talked about Nick Jones, who is also going to step in at that slot cornerback spot. He talked about some of the outside guys who are going to contribute to that outside spot. So they have options. And, quite honestly, I always thought the case might be that the Giants would have a rotation, if you will, or maybe not a rotation, committee is a better word for that. Different cornerbacks in that slot, based on the matchups and whatnot. So it's actually, you don't want to see a guy hurt, and that it's a tough break for Drew Phillips that he has to miss a few practices, and you hope he comes back full strength and that knee doesn't give him any problems. But it's also an opportunity to see what the other guys bring to the table. So in that regard, that's the silver lining, if you want to call it that. So that was nice. Now, the Giants made an interesting acquisition today. They signed another fullback, Grant Finley. Grant Finley is a guy that they had in their rookie minicamp. He was in on a tryout. Giants brought him in and they signed him, and they dropped one of the tight ends they had, Tyler Moore, I think it was, a guy they had signed before the start of camp. This is an interesting thing to keep an eye on with Grant Finley. I don't think he's going to make the 53, but as a potential developmental prospect, Finley was mostly a defensive lineman in college, and he kind of made the switch over to fullback. Got a little work at fullback. Remember Nikita Whitlock years ago? Same kind of situation. Or more recently, remember some guy named Patrick Ricard? He started off as a defensive lineman, made the switch over to fullback. So you just wonder, do the Giants like this guy Finley enough to where, okay, they've got Pat Ricard under contract for 2 years. Maybe they develop Finley to be his successor. So that's something to keep an eye on as we go through the preseason games, which start again next Saturday. So let's see, what else do I have for you? All right, so I mean, really, as far as Thursday's practice goes, those were kind of the highlights, if you will. There are 2 more practices at the Greenbrier. Friday, it's supposed to be, I think, a 2.5-hour practice. Saturday, it's a shorter practice, and then they come home on Monday. They're back at East Rutherford, and there should be a lot more, to talk about, because again, the pads will probably go on at least once, if not twice, during the coming week, and then we get into the preseason. So there'll be a lot more to talk about as far as the football aspect goes. All right, coming up next, John Harbaugh is doing something with his evaluation of this team that I absolutely love, and I want to talk about that when we come back after this. Hey Giant fans, life gets busy and figuring out what's for dinner every night can quickly become another thing on the to-do list. Home Chef takes the stress out of mealtimes by delivering fresh ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes right to your door. Whether you're looking to eat healthier, save money on takeout, or simply spend less time on grocery shopping and meal planning, Home Chef makes cooking at home simple, convenient, and enjoyable. Home Chef offers more than 30 meal options every week, including calorie-conscious and GLP-1 friendly meals, so that there's something for every schedule and lifestyle. And people really love it. Home Chef is rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. With my days getting busy again, I can't tell you how easy and convenient it is to have Home Chef meals in my refrigerator because I know what's going into each meal rather than having to guess what's in takeout food. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering listeners 50% off and free shipping for their first box plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/lockedonnfl. That's homechef.com/lockedonnfl for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. Homechef.com/lockedonnfl must be an active subscriber to receive a free dessert. Hey, Giant fans, there are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. The hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Game Time. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive savings opportunities that help get you to the events that you want to see without the usual hassle. My biggest pet peeve is when you think you found a great deal, you get all the way to checkout, and then suddenly the final price looks completely different than what you were expecting. Game Time takes the guesswork out of that. And with Game Time, I know exactly what my view will look like, which is an added bonus. By helping me with knowing the price before I pay and what my view will look like, I can buy tickets with a lot more confidence. So go on, take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. Locked On Giants is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. And we are celebrating our 10th anniversary all year long. So thank you for making 10 years possible. It's been a great, for me, almost 10 years. I haven't quite been with the network for 10 years, but I'm getting there. Next February will be my 10th year with the network. As always, welcome to the Blue Crew, to our newcomers and everybody in between. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if you're just spending a few minutes with us today on the podcast, we appreciate that as well. And I am your host, Patricia Traina, a credentialed member of the Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants On Side, which is where all our written work can be found. All right, let's get back to today's show. Now, I want to talk about something that John Harbaugh has been doing in terms of how he's setting up this team, how he's evaluating this team. And I absolutely love this approach because past head coaches haven't always done this, and it's kind of driven me crazy. And I suspect once I tell you what it is, a lot of you are going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right. With John Harbaugh, there is no such thing as scholarships. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, it doesn't matter where you were drafted. It doesn't matter what your contract value is. It doesn't matter who you're related to. It doesn't matter how well you sing in the rookie hazing part of camp. None of that matters. What matters is, are you the best at your position? Are you worthy of a spot in the lineup? Are you worthy of a spot on the team? And that's so important because, look, I don't have to tell you guys, if you've been a longtime Giant fan, there have been instances where the Giants have stuck with guys because they were a high draft pick and they put them on scholarship. It's like, oh, let's not give up on talent because, this guy, we drafted him in the first round, or we drafted him in day 2. No. Harbaugh is not playing that game. And I am thrilled with that. If you want a spot on this team, you work for it. You earn it. Just like you earn anything else in life. And if you don't work for it, if you sit back on your laurels and you say, well, I was a first round draft pick, so I got it made. You're in for a rude awakening if you think that. That all stems back to the accountability factor that Harbaugh spoke about. Everybody is accountable. And here's the other thing that we could take into consideration. If a guy gets injured, there's no having to really worry about being Wally pipped. It's all going to boil down to who is the best option. So might have been times in the past where a guy would get injured and then he'd be Wally pipped, or a coach would come in and he'd bring his guys in, and that would mean the end of the line for other guys. I think back to when Joe Judge came in and he brought Nate Ebner and Michael Thomas, who I thought was the better player for special teams and for that defensive secondary. Michael Thomas basically got edged out. None of that with John Harbaugh. And that's so rare, because a lot of times coaches do bring their own guys in. And I'm not saying, I know that John Harbaugh brought some Baltimore Ravens with him, but those guys got to earn their keep. And I think the guys that Harbaugh brought with him are guys that he knows are going to earn their keep. He just didn't bring anybody. He brought guys that he knows they work. They don't take it for granted. They know that they're, not necessarily pets, teachers' pets. So I like that whole approach. I like the accountability approach. Sometimes we didn't see that in the past. We would see guys get away with things because they were a high draft pick or because they made a ton of money. That's stopping. And, isn't it about time that has stopped? They say when it comes to competing, all's fair, but it hasn't really been all's fair for the Giants in past years. So Harbaugh is bringing back that fairness. And what I'm curious to see as we go through the rest of training camp and the preseason and even the season, what's going to happen if somebody is struggling to the point where, okay, maybe now we've got to make a change. How much of a line is Harbaugh going to give a guy who's struggling? Now, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but the goal, obviously, is to win. So if you have a guy out there who is starting and he's struggling, does Harbaugh sit him? Does he work through it with him? How does he approach it? I could see, depending on the situation, depending on the player, I can see him saying, okay, you know what? If this guy's struggling, maybe we give him a timeout, if you will, and we try somebody else. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as we go through, again, the rest of the training camp, the preseason, even into the season. I don't think the Giants will have very many situations, if any, where they have to say, okay, this guy is struggling so bad, we've got to sit him down and replace him. But if anything, you want to see guys grow. You want to see them develop, right? So maybe a guy who starts week 1 and he doesn't have a whole lot of snaps, or if it's a receiver, maybe he doesn't get a lot of targets. Maybe by the end of the season, he's seeing more snaps and more targets. So you got to see how it plays out, because look, here's the other thing. If these guys struggle or they don't develop, they have to ask themselves, and when I say they, the coaching staff has to ask themselves, is it because the player's just not putting the effort in, or is it because we as coaches are not getting the most out of this guy? We're not teaching him the right way, or we're not reaching him with our communication style. So again, it goes back to that accountability factor, and it's shared in a way, because look, if you don't work on this team, if you're a player and you don't work, you're out of here. But if you come in and you work, you make an effort, and you're still struggling, the coaches have to ask themselves, okay, is it because this guy just doesn't have it? Or is it because we're having trouble reaching him, or we need to adjust how we reach him? And I just like this whole, again, it's an old school approach. It's what Tom Coughlin used to do. And, you guys hear me all the time. I talk about the old days with Tom Coughlin, because they really were in this century at any rate, they were the golden years of Giants football. He had some really good years with the approaches that he took. And that's something that Harbaugh, cut from that same cloth, is bringing back to the Giants. And I like it. And I hope that it pays off for them. And I think it will. I actually think it will. Still a lot to see, and we'll find out if it does. All right, Giant fans. Coming up next, the Locked On NFL hosts voted on the top 100 NFL players. 3 Giants made the list. What 3 and where did they place? And did they place at the right spot? I'm going to go over all of that when we come back. Locked On Giants is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball fans, if you think you know who's hitting a homer today, FanDuel is giving you a free chance to call your shot with daily dingers. It's easy to play. Just make your free pick for who you think will hit a home run in their game. And if you're right, you'll receive a profit boost to use on your next bet for a chance at extra winnings. And best of all, you can make a free pick every day throughout the Major League Baseball season. I'm rolling with Houston Astros slugger Yordan Alvarez to win the MLB home run title. And if you have a hunch, then why not swing for the fences with Daily Dingers on FanDuel and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Giant fans. The Locked On NFL Top 100 is here, voted on by the NFL hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover the teams and players every day. You can find the full list on Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, as I mentioned, 3 Giants made the Top 100. And you could probably guess who the 3 are, all right? But in case you don't know, the 3 Giants that made it: Andrew Thomas, Malik Nabers, Brian Burns. To be honest with you, those were the 3 that I put forward, that I submitted as part of the voting process, that I nominated. Andrew Thomas, let's go down the list. I'll tell you where they ranked and if I agree or disagree with the ranking. Andrew Thomas came in number 83 on the list. Now, I can understand why Andrew Thomas was ranked that high on the list, or low, actually, that low on the list. Andrew Thomas, his biggest thing has been availability or lack of availability. When he is healthy, Andrew Thomas is one of the elite left tackles in this league. All right, last year he had a 90.3 Pro Football Focus grade. Which made him the 4th best tackle. He was a top 3 tackle in pass and run blocking. The guy is just the best offensive lineman the Giants have, hands down. But the injury situation is a problem. And that's why Thomas did not rank higher in this list. So I think if Thomas can stay healthy, and knock on wood, so far so good, knock on wood, I could see him rising in the ranking next year when we do this poll again. Because look, left tackles, they are a premium. And if you've got a really good one, and the Giants do, in Andrew Thomas, he should be higher up on the list, or closer to, number 1. If I had to, predict where he might land in next year's polls, figure he's probably going to be somewhere in that 40 to 60 range, which is not bad, and about where I think he should be. So Andrew Thomas, that, quite honestly, I think that was probably the one ranking that I was like, I'm not so sure about. But I understand why he was ranked at 83. All right, now up next is Malik Nabers. Nabers came in at number 55. Now, I understand that one as well. And I think that's a fair ranking for Malik Nabers. Nabers has had really one full season of elite production, which, by the way, he accomplished with multiple quarterbacks, making it even more special, if you will. Now, last year, as we know, Malik missed most of the season with the torn ACL. And there are some questions about, how soon is he going to look like his pre-injury self? If Malik makes that full recovery and regains the form that he had prior to his injury, There is no reason why Malik Nabers this time next year can't be in the 25 to 35 range. All right. He can even be a top 10 receiver if everything goes according to plan. So knock on wood, he's trending in that direction, but still got to show it, obviously. So I didn't really have a problem with where Malik ended up ranking. I felt that was a fair ranking for him. Brian Burns ranked the best out of the three Giants. Burns came in at number 38. Now, I felt Burns maybe should have been a little higher. All right. Burns last year, he was the centerpiece of the defense. I thought he could have been a top 25, to be honest with you. I mean, how many guys last year had double-digit sacks? I mean, he had 16 and a half sacks. And if it wasn't for Myles Garrett having that monster year, I mean, Burns would have been certainly up there for the sack title last year. I felt Burns should have been a little higher. But, again, I understand the perspective here. And I'm not speaking for the other voters because I don't know how all the other hosts voted, but I think the one thing that was holding Burns back in the ranking is that he wasn't as consistent with his run defense as he was with his pass rush. He straightens that out, and I think Burns, without question, can be a top 25 moving forward. So, not a horrible ranking for Burns at 38. I would have liked to have seen him maybe just a smidge higher, but now I'm quibbling, I guess, with the ranking. I mean, I would have had him, I think I had Burns 33 on my list of the top 100. But, so I wasn't that far off when I voted. But anyway, for those of you who are wondering, I'm going to just run through real quick the top 100. I'm going to put the graphics on the screen. So again, if you're listening to the show on our audio platforms, I recommend checking it out. We do have a separate program on the rankings, and you'll hear I contributed a piece about Malik Nabers, and you'll hear the other hosts talking about where they put the voting and where their respective players landed. But for those of you watching on YouTube, here is 100 through 91, and this would be 81 through 90. And we have 71 through 80. Then we have 61 through 70. By the way, old friend Dexter Lawrence came in at number 63. Then we have 51 through 60. Malik Nabers, you can see there he is at number 55. Here's 41 through 50. Then we have, by the way, Dak Prescott at 49. I don't know how Dak Prescott continues to be that high, but, it is what it is, I guess. All right, so here is 41 through 50. Here is 31 through 40. Saquon Barkley, old friend, at number 35. Then we have 21 through 30. All right. Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions ranking ahead of Brian Burns. Again, Hutchinson a little bit better in terms of, being overall, run defense and pass rush. So Hutchinson of the Lions coming in at 29. Here is 11 through 20. And then last but not least, we'll have our top 10. And the top 10, Myles Garrett, Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, Patrick Surtain II, Justin Jefferson at number 5. Number 6 was Jackson Smith-Njigba. Number 7, Lamar Jackson. I don't know if I would have had Jackson that high. I don't think I had Jackson in my top 10. I think I had him at 12 if I remember correctly. Joe Burrow at number 8. Will Anderson Jr. I had Will Anderson a little higher in my top 10. He comes in at number 9 overall. And then number 10 was Penei Sewell. All right, so that was the top 100. And again, check out the full podcast on Locked On NFL, and you'll be able to hear more analysis on that. They really did a good job with that. And some surprises, I think, as you'll see. Though you'll probably disagree with some of the rankings, but it was still a fun exercise. We do that every year now here on the Locked On NFL Network. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Giants. We'll be back next week with all new episodes. The Giants return to East Rutherford next week. So more training camp coverage to come. Hope you will tune in. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I will see you next week.